Folks, I want to talk about a super cool hero inside Watcher of Realms who's finally getting the love that she deserves. Now, we're going to be talking about Alaura today, the marksman, of course, as you've seen by the thumbnail. And I've been pretty high on her, in all honesty, since she was released. I really like her kit. I absolutely love the way she looks. Her and Constance are some of the coolest character designs in the game, in my opinion. I'm a little bit biased. I definitely love the kind of like elf and knight kind of look, especially if it's combined, right? So super cool stuff there, but I've liked her since she was initially released. I didn't really make a video on her because she didn't really shine in any particular area of the game. She was just kind of serviceable in most areas, but not really the best, right? But that has now changed, where she is hands down, without a question, the best in-slot unit for some of the most end game content available in the game currently. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be showcasing her and talking you through how to build her and all that sort of good stuff as well. So real quick, if you like the Watcher of Realms content, make sure to go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe on the video, all that YouTube jazz. And there is a Discord linked down below as well if you'd like to hop in there and be part of the community. Let's go ahead and take a look at her kit. So she's very basic. Talent, when the ultimate is not activated, remains in the invisibility state. Invisibility just simply means cannot be targeted, right? Basic attack, pretty simple. I don't have her fully booked, just getting that out of the way now, but her ultimate is fully booked, which is, you know, whatever. She deals 110% damage to one enemy prioritizing airborne units. This will scale up to 120% damage. You know, kind of basic multipliers, nothing too insane. We have an extreme concentration passive, increases crit rate by 15%. If there are no allies in the adjacent tiles, increases crit damage by 30%, and with another book, that would be a 35% increase. We have the scattered shots passive. During the ultimate, for each crit hit landed, deals 70% damage to 2 targets within 1.5 tiles of the initial target. Now, what does the ultimate do? Well, when triggered, loses invisibility. Each attack changes to 2 consecutive strikes, and damage to airborne units is increased by 60%. So she is essentially doubling her damage plus another like 60%, right? Because everything's going to be 2 consecutive strikes, so she's doing essentially 240% damage on her basic attack. And then her damage to the airborne units is increased by 60%. So, like I said, a very basic kit, right? So what does she do? Well, she does a little bit of damage. She prioritizes airborne units, and she is invisible. So let's go ahead and talk through a couple of other important things here. So first of all, we have this, right? So it increases her crit rate by 15%, which you'll see in the gearing as well. When you get her Awakened 1, if you have her Awakened 1, excess crit rate is converted into an equal percentage of crit damage. Now, this is very, very strong because a lot of times, for her especially, right? So like when I'm building a hero, and I talk about this all the time, but like I have basically just different tiers of gear, not to be confused with a tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 gear in the game, but you know, my tier 1 gear, my best of the best, it goes on my best heroes, right? So for example, when we're looking at marksman, I'm going to have my tier 1, my very best gear on somebody like a Silas or a Hex or a Nyx or a Yuri, right? Or a Sithra, certainly. Heroes like that. Then my tier 2 gear is going to go on to kind of filler heroes. So a lot of times, somebody like an Alaura, right? Somebody that I don't use as much, like a Laurel or, you know, a Brienne, something like that. Somebody I don't use as much, but somebody I still want to have decent gear. And Alaura is going to be very much that kind of filler gear champion on my account. And the thing with that is all of your best gear, so your attack percentage pieces and your crit damage pieces, they usually go on your best heroes, obviously. So by the time you get around to gearing a hero like Alaura, you may only have, you know, a crit damage ring left, or sorry, rather a crit rate ring left, right? Or something of that nature, which then this A1 is going to mean, hey, that crit rate, even if it pushes us over the cap, that's essentially now just an extra 60% crit damage, right? Which isn't as good as having a crit damage piece on her instead, but it's still just something to consider. Now, A2, attack plus 300. A3, crit hits triggered in the invisibility state will have a 50% chance to deal an additional 80% damage to 2 targets within 1.5 tiles of the initial target. So basically just upping her kind of pseudo AoE damage. A4, crit rate plus 8%, which is a bit weird. It'd be nice to see some more penetration or something like that here, but, or, you know, maybe like a reduced cost or something like that. I don't really think a crit rate increase is the best option. And then A5 When in the invisibility state, every 10 crit hits triggered will increase damage by 10% during the next ultimate, stacking up to 3 times, so up to a 30% ultimate increase. When the ultimate ends, the damage increase will be removed. Now, here's the thing. I think she should be able to stack this up and just keep it and have that 30% damage increase, even when the ultimate's not there, right? Like, she's not so strong. Like, think of it this way. If you have an Alaura A5, that means you've dumped a bunch of soul stones into her, or you've pulled her 6 times, right? Simple as that. I think the A5 should be significantly stronger than this. This isn't a very strong A5. Really, her A1 is where it's at, and certainly don't use soul stones on her. She's not worth it. Now, when it comes to the artifact, you have a few options. So, her exclusive is pretty good. So, increases anti-air damage by 21%. Scattered shots can bounce 1 additional time on hit, dealing 40% damage. So again, kind of just increasing her potential AoE capabilities. Now, another option for her is, of course, going to be the Blight Caller's Claw. So this is going to increase single target damage by 20%. After basic attack, has a 15% chance to trigger a special strike that deals 100% physical damage to one target. This effect can only be triggered one time every 4 seconds. So obviously, having that chance to do another big smack is going to be fantastic. This would be really good on an Alaura as well if you're simply just trying to look to increase her damage capabilities. Now, when it comes to the gear, there's a few things I want to call out. So first of all, without a question, in my opinion, the best in slot set is going to be Infernal Roar for like 90% of the player base. And the reason for that is even during her ultimate, everything she does is still a basic attack. So just having that flat out 40% damage increase is going to be very good for her. She doesn't necessarily make it into much content where, you know, you have like a really long, prolonged battle. So you're not using her inside Semra or Drake's Chasm or anything like that. So, you know, Soulbound Arcana doesn't necessarily have the time to stack up and go past it. But I do think that if you can manage it on your account, Cataclysm is actually going to be a better option. A significantly better option. Like, it's not even close. Cataclysm, again, if you can manage it with a few very specific caveats, if you can manage it on your account, it's going to be best in slot for Alaura. And what are those caveats? Well, first of all, for the Bangle, you can go ahead and get her exclusive Cataclysm Bangle, which I do have a very good piece, but it's on Kagiri. So, Cataclysm, upon landing a crit hit with basic attack, increases the hero's damage by 10% for 8 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. So it's kind of like a pseudo Infernal Roar, right? It's a temporary damage stack. It's really good for people with high attack speed, whatever. But her exclusive effect for it, so after casting the ultimate, the invisibility is no longer removed. When invisible, her attack increases by 6%. This is like literally game-changing for this hero, right? Like literally. This is like something that takes her from here and puts her all the way up here, right? Now, it's not mandatory by any means to have the exclusive gear on her. I used her inside Gear Raid 3 to quite good effect, but this is going to make it significantly easier to use her in a lot of pieces of content by having this exclusive. Now, additionally, for other exclusives inside Cataclysm, if you come over to the ring section, you have a few options. So obviously you have any sort of Watch Guard exclusive she can also benefit from. So increasing her damage by 8%. There's also things like oh, I can't find another one now, apparently. There's also the anti-air damage plus 8%. You know, lots of options that you have here. And you can also benefit from the Star Piercers, right? So that's another thing to call out. Dual faction membership. She is part of the Watchguard, so you can benefit from Ingrid or Leia. And then Star Piercers, you can also use her with Araka or Eovar if you have them. Even Lunaria and Eliza will be good options, right? So this is going to extend her range beyond that regular basic attack. But why is her exclusive gear so game-changing? Well, in a lot of content, if you don't have it, you're essentially just going to place her down and have her never trigger her ultimate, because her ultimate is going to make her not invisible, which allows her to be targeted, especially by the boss in something like your Raid 3, in which case she's going to get just shredded, right? But if you can trigger her ultimate and have her remain invisible, that is absolutely perfect. So let's go ahead and now do a little showcase on her now that I've gotten all of the important bits out of the way. So we're going to go into Gear Raid 3. I did use her on stage 22. Now, again, this is some of the hardest content available to us in the game. And if you look at the recommended lineups, you're going to see a lot of like Silas, Nyx, you know, you're going to see Lady A in here, right? Popular heroes, especially if we go there, you're going to see Lady A in here. But Alaura is up at the top as well, which is pretty cool, right? To have somebody like this at the top of content this hard is pretty insane. Now, I don't know if the recommended lineup really only shows me options that I have. Obviously, it doesn't because I don't have Nestia, but there it is. There's Lady A-Team. I was going to say, I'd certainly expect to see Lady A-Teams in here a little bit more commonly, but I'm going to go in here with Power of Dominance on. I'm not really, doing a showcase or anything like that on Gear Aid 3. I'm more so just trying to show you what the hero is capable of. So, for this particular team, if you're trying to copy it, you'd place Yuri, then you'd place Diao, and then you're going to pop her ultimate right away. Now, you're actually not going to pop the Yuri ultimate. You're going to pop Diao once again. You're going to save up a little bit more cost. You're going to get your Diao popped once again. And then you're going to get your Silas out there. Then you pop Yuri. And the reason for that is our Yuri is in Soulbound Arcana. So obviously every time an ultimate is triggered, she's going to have her damage increased. So getting that damage increase is significant. Now, first of all, we are going to place Hatsuit over here just to start targeting this guy. We're going to go ahead and pop Hatsuit's ultimate. And as soon as the ultimate's over, then we can go ahead and recall her. And then I'm going to place Alaura. So you can see with the Eovar Lord bonus, she can now reach all the way out to this portal. She is invisible. We're going to switch Diao Chan over here. We're going to pop our Silas for some big DPS on the boss. We do have the decreased defense coming in from the Yuri as well. The boss is going to do some hard smacks to us, though, so we really just want to have the Diao Chan doing a little bit of healing for the time being, but we are going to place Airless. Then we can switch our Diao Chan back to Inspiration mode since we no longer need it. And you're going to see the DPS to the boss goes pretty crazy. Now, we are just going to let them kind of take care of things in the middle a little bit here. At this point, we will essentially also be saving cost up for our Nyx. But on the right-hand side, rather, you can see that Alaura is now able to effectively deal with these enemies. Because she's invisible, right? They can't target her. The boss certainly can't target her. One huge trick for Gear Aid 3, by the way, especially if you're struggling to get through it, go ahead and put your Nyx or whoever's on the left-hand side into a Ichor Chalice, right? That's going to make it so that even if the boss does target them, the boss isn't really going to be able to do anything. So now at this point, you can go ahead and pick up your Yuri, you can go ahead and pick up your Silas, you can go ahead and pick up your Diao Chan, and then I'll put my Eovar here. I don't know why I picked up Diao Chan, I probably shouldn't have anyways. And at this point, you can start to trigger the Alauras, right? So you can see we get that big damage coming into the primary target, and then it bounces out and does big damage to the other targets as well, and kind of just bounces around through them. And she can easily handle this right-hand side. In most situations, at least. What's kind of nice with it, especially if you time it right, is her ultimate's going to end right as the enemies start rolling forward, so they can't even target her. Now, you are very hard-pressed to find any sort of a unit that can handle the right-hand side on their own, especially one that doesn't have to be picked up and put down all the time. So, realistically, worst-case scenario, you could have somebody like a Hatsuit put there with her initial invisibility when she's deployed, but sooner or later, she is going to have to be picked up, right? You could place your Yuri or something over there, but just having the Alaura who can sit here and just solo this side, essentially. And you've seen her build, you've seen her gear. She wasn't in anything too crazy. She doesn't have her exclusives or anything like that. She doesn't even have a max promo artifact, right? So I always say it too, this account is 100% free to play. Anything that I achieve on this account, I'm confident that anybody else can achieve with just enough time in the game and a little bit of luck, to be honest, right? Like, it's certainly not lost on me the fact that I have some of the best heroes inside the game, but I don't have high awakenings or anything like that, so, it is what it is, right? But you can see Alaura does an absolutely fantastic job of handling the right-hand side. Now, that is stage 22. Obviously, things are significantly harder with stage 23. I have not managed to beat that content quite yet. We get a pretty terrible Soulbound Arcana piece there, unfortunately. So we're going to go ahead and go back to the home page, and I'm going to take her into the Drake's Chasm real quick. I will actually show you a little bit more in depth her build here as well. So I'm going to go to Alaura. I didn't show you the overall stats or anything like that. So total stats, almost 15k on the attack. We have 378 on the speed, 111, and then 334 on the crit rate and crit damage. Obviously, that extra crit rate is going to go into the crit damage, which is pretty nice. 20% rage regen. You know, nothing too crazy overall. She doesn't even need HP or anything like that. She's just invisible during the fight, right? Which is very, very nice. Now, we'll go into the Drake's Chasm, and I'll show you what she's capable of on that front. So we're going to go into Nightmare 4, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring in a Star Piercer team, essentially. So we're going to bring in Yovar for her, the best lord in the game, of course. Now, here's the thing, right? So I would bring in another couple of marksmen to do like a damage comparison, but it's going to be a little bit unfair. So other marksmen, so if we look at like Silas, if we look at, you know, Sithra, if we look at Hex, they all specialize in doing big burst damage. Or if we look at somebody like a Theowin, they specialize more so in doing like control and those sorts of things, right? Whereas Alaura specializes in doing okay damage, but she has so much else in her kit that makes her the best in slot for where she needs to do that damage, right? Namely the invisibility, the crit rate increases, and the anti-air damage increases. So if we bring in any other sort of a marksman, they're definitely going to blow her out of the water in terms of damage. We are certainly going to bring them in, though, just to, you know, kind of showcase that. Let's see if we have some good gear here. Yes, we do. So we'll go ahead and do this. 90% crit rate on the Sithra. It's less than I'd like, but it is what it is. And he's also missing an artifact. My Sithra is naked for some reason, unfortunately. Let's just go ahead and throw like a I don't really want to throw a sharpshooter crest on her. Let's go ahead and throw that one. It's not max promo or anything, but it is what it is. So this is going to be the team. We'll also bring in like a Diao and then a airless, right? So we'll do something like this. And then maybe we'll bring in like a holo just for some extra heals. And we'll go into the playtest. And again, I'm not expecting to see her out DPS anyone here, right? Like even during her ultimate, she doesn't do crazy damage, but you're bringing her for everything else that she brings in her kit. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to place Alaura. We're going to place Diao to get the inspo. We're going to place Silas. Then we're going to place our holo, who is also an inspiration. Then we're going to place Sithra. Then we're going to place our airless, who now gave the inspo to her, so that's perfect. And then we're also going to place an a Laurel, or Idril, rather. I kept saying Laurel, I'm not sure why, but we're going to go ahead. We're going to pop the ultimates as soon as they come up as well. So you guys can kind of see like what kind of damage gets done there. Obviously, Sithra is getting off to a very good start there. Silas is going to overtake her though, so Sithra is very much just like a quick burst damage that you would use in like single target arena or something like that. She's not necessarily somebody that you'd use inside like, you know, boss content or those sorts of things. So keep in mind as well that my Alaura is a 1. Sithra is a 0 because she's obviously an ancient exclusive. She's significantly harder to get. So the damage split, it is quite crazy. We've unfortunately just had Alaura get passed by Idril, which is quite insane. So the epic hero with significantly less damage in her kit is doing more damage than the legendary A1, which goes to show that I was definitely onto something when I said that her A5 needs to be a little bit stronger. I do think the A3 should be a little bit stronger as well. Definitely the A1 should be stronger. So I do think she should get a buff. She's definitely not... She's not where she should be as she currently is, though I still think she's a very good hero, if that makes sense. So what I would do to her kit, and Moonton, if you're watching this, you know, please do this. The A1 should become part of her kit. It should be just another passive. You know, make it a bond skill, right? Even maybe make it a bond skill with like a... I don't know, add a new marksman to the game, right? Like add a fusion marksman to the game or something like that. That'll be a bond skill with the Alaura. That would be pretty cool. And just give us an option to power her up that way. And then additionally, instead of her A1 just being the crit rate increase, make it something a little bit stronger, right? Make it like a extra hit or something like that when she triggers her ultimate a certain number of times. Make it like a good damage increase, because at the end of the day, she's a single target marksman who has invisibility in her kit, which makes her the best in slot for what she can do, but she also doesn't bring enough to the table to make her viable in other areas, right? So that's something to consider. As you can see, the damage is pretty pathetic, right? So she's bringing up the tail out of all of the potential marksmen we brought in, one of which was an epic. Granted, one of the better base epic marksmen, so, you know, just take it with a grain of salt. But all that being said, let's go ahead and give her some ratings, as we always do here at the end of these showcase videos. So, what we're going to do, Gear Raid 3, she's absolutely a 5. She is, once again, best in slot. Arena Anti-Air, she's going to be like a 4, maybe, because she can do damage, she's low cost, she has damage bonuses against Anti-Air, but she's single target, which you don't really want for that. Faction Trials, definitely going to be a 5. Gear Dungeon 2. Now, Gear Dungeon 2, she could be very good for, obviously, you know, being the physical DPS, right? But the problem with that is that she doesn't have anything to counter the damage that's being brought to her, so you're going to have to build her in like an Ichor Chalice or something like that. Tide, she's probably going to be a 4 as well. Arena single target DPS, she has a 4.7. I think that's pretty high. I'm going to give her like a 2. She just doesn't do enough damage to be really viable there. Void Rift, a 4. Guild Wars, she's going to be like a 2. She doesn't do anything inside Guild Wars that's special, right? So she's invisible. That's cool. Yeah, you know what? Maybe we'll give her like a... I'm just trying to think, like, invisibility, is it enough? Probably not, because you can also have somebody these days like a Alaura who's also invisible. I have like a Hatsuit, obviously, who's invisible. And you're really just placing marksmen like out of the way anyway, so the invisibility doesn't really matter. I'll give her a 3 just to be fair. XP Raid, she's probably going to be a 4. Drake's Chasm, you've seen, she's going to be a 3. There's epics that do more damage to her than her. Gold Raid is going to be a 4. Immortal Codex, I'm thinking a 3. She doesn't really do anything particularly special. Gear Raid, or Gear Dungeon 1, probably a 1. Gear Raid 2, she's going to be a 2. She just doesn't have enough DPS output to really be useful there. Tower of Deception, sure, we'll give her a 4. She could be useful. Artifact Material, probably a 3. Titanic Runes, I'm going to give her a 2. She doesn't do enough DPS. Just bring in Idril, right? You've already seen that. She doesn't do DPS. She doesn't buff strip. She doesn't do anything special there. So let's go ahead. Gear Raid 1. She's going to be a 1. She doesn't do enough damage to really take people out. And she's certainly not an AoE damage dealer. Arena AoE DPS, she's going to be a 1. And Malork's Halls of Illusion, probably a 3. You know what? We can give her a 4. We can give her a 4 there. She definitely has, like, you know, some potential. She can be placed on some of those pesky platforms and not have to worry about being targeted. So those are my reviews on Alaura. You know, you can see some very interesting stuff that gets commented here by people, but she is a fantastic unit. If you're struggling inside Gear Raid 3, I would highly recommend to build her, to potentially book her, and don't soulstone her, though. That would be that would be a big mistake. So that being said, though, thank you guys all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.